So, you would like to learn how to make custom armors with Fallout New Vegas.
Okie dokie.
Alright, let's get started. First we need to import base human body from the game. You can find it in Meshes, Characters, Mail. For this tutorial I'm going to use UpperBody.nif. Just go ahead and import what you need into Blender. Once your body is in the scene, you can start modeling directly over it. Make sure the armor fully aligns with the body in its shape and size. The game won't render body beneath the armor, so any parts you want to be visible need to be a separate mesh. Alright, once your base mesh is done, we need to discuss the texturing. So let's quickly go over the textures used by materials in Fallout New Vegas. So we have standard diffuse texture, which can also include transparency. We have normal map. It's important to remember that specular serves as its alpha channel. So the normal map is not only responsible for surface detail, but also controls how shiny the surface actually appears. And last but not least, we have the glow texture, responsible for emitting light. An example of which can be NCR Ranger's helmet. Now you have the real-time reflections mode installed. You can also play around with panoramas and environmental mapping. But I'm not going to go into the detail now in this video. Okay, now once you have your textures ready, you want to go to File, Save As, change to DDS format. Make sure here to choose the ext5 interpolated alpha. Generate mipmaps should be enabled, and everything else here can be disabled. If you have any transparency of your diffuse image, then make sure to keep it enabled so it actually makes things transparent. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm obviously going to keep it disabled as I have no transparency on this texture. I click Save. And for the normal map, just as I said before, we need to have our specular as an alpha channel. And we basically do the same thing. We save it as a DDS. The ext5 interpolated. We generate the mipmaps, and everything else can remain as it is. Now that our textures are done, we can get to the rigging part. So what I want you to do is first go to the append, head to the modding necessities, go to the helpful assets, skeleton for animating, and append it. This will allow you to import the animations directly onto your skeleton. So let's do that. Go to your data folder, Meshes, Characters, Mail, Locomotion, and choose any of the animations you prefer. I'm gonna use the 1 HP forward, but as you can see, the mesh doesn't move with the skeleton. Now what we want to do is we want to click on the mesh that we have, shift click on our skeleton, press Ctrl P, and with empty groups. But as you can see, it still hasn't moved, even if we move the animation. That's because the model isn't weight painted. Now I'll show you very quickly how to transfer weights from the in-game models onto your new mesh so you can speed up your workflow. First, find an armor that's very similar to yours. In my case, it's going to be a combat armor. Now, remove any meat caps. And now join the entire armor with Ctrl J. Rename it to something like reference, so it's easier. Now, what you want to do is you want to click on it, shift click your mesh, go to the weight paint, weights, transfer weights, change vertex mapping to the nearest face interpolated, and source layers to by name. And as you can see, it transferred the weight paints from the combat armor onto our mesh. We can now safely remove the reference. As you can see, there are points that are sticking out or are disformed. So what I want you to do now is to go in and clean up the mesh like you would normally do. To make weight painting easier, I suggest clicking on your skeleton, going to View per Display, and enabling the names. This will make it easier to figure out which bone you are actually working on. If you ever take a closer look at any of the armors from the game, you'll quickly notice it's split into different parts. Firstly, we have the arms. These are always rendered in the first person, which is important to separate them from the rest of the body. For example, if we kept the collar as a part of the arms, it would obstruct our view in the first person. Then secondly, we have the upper body, which is our main body, and it's not rendered in the first person. So if you have any shoulder pads or anything that's obstructing your view, just make sure to rename it to the upper body. Now, we also have the PipboyOff and PipboyOn. These are rendered in both the first and the third person, same as the arms, depending on whether the Pip-Boy is equipped or not. Now let's take what we've learned and apply it to our mesh. I'm going to start by separating the arms. I'll now separate the left arm. And I'll duplicate it. Now I need to rename all of the meshes. So this one will be the upper body. This one will be arms. This one will be PipboyOff. And its duplicate will be PipboyOn. I can hide the PipboyOff for now. But for the PipboyOn, as you can see, the wrist is essentially too big to fit the Pip-Boy, meaning it will clip through the Pip-Boy. So how do we solve that, right? Start by going to File, Import, Nif, head to my modding necessities, helpful assets, Pip-Boy align with the wrist, and import it. Now what we want to do is we want to take our mesh and try to gently fit it into the Pip-Boy. Now, as you can see, I have finished aligning the wrist with the Pip-Boy. I have decided to completely remove any polygons beneath the Pip-Boy, so there is ultimately no clipping at all. I can now safely remove the Pip-Boy. And as you can see, we now have two separate meshes. So what we want to do now is we want to import any of the armors from the game. Doesn't matter which. After importing, we want to remove all of its meshes and only keep the skeleton. Now what we'll do is we'll go into the armature and assign the skeleton. You want to do it on all of the meshes. So it should look something like this. Since I have a different texture set for the chest, legs, boots, and the arms, I've also decided to split the upper body into 3 separate pieces. Now, before we export our model, we actually need to go and set up the materials. So click on any of the meshes, go to the Materials tab, create a new one. Scroll down until you see the Nifskope shader. Choose the second one, BS shader PP lightning property. Make sure it's set to shader default, unless it's part of the body, then make it a shader skin, I believe. For the shader flags, these all have a reason to be here. Each of them does something else, and enable certain properties for your mesh. But for the sake of the armor, all we need is Z-buffer test, specular, skinned, and this one is very important for anything that's actually weight painted, and remappable textures. Now for the shader flags too, we need Z-buffer right. Now I want you to apply this material to all of your meshes. Now for the last steps before we actually export this mesh, I want you to click on it, go into data panel, go to the attributes, and apply BP torso with the underscore. Change the domain to face and data type to boolean.
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 Yeah, boolean. Add it. Go to the mesh in the edit mode. Go to the set attribute, apply it, and I want you to redo it on every single piece. Right, now that this has been done, we need to remove everything except for our armor from the scene. So, I have a backup of the body, so I'll just remove it. There we go. And now what we want to do is we want to export into Nif. Before exporting, I also suggest you to make sure that your mesh has been triangulated. But you can also just stripify it here. So, I'm going to export as a Nif. There we go. And if I go to the downloads, as you can see, my mesh has been successfully exported. Now let's talk dismemberment. So what I want you to do now is to go into File, Import, Nif, and import any of the armors from the game. Once this is done, remove anything but the gore and meat cup parts. Now for the next step, I actually want you to somewhat align the meat caps with your body. You can also make them by hand. That way they will fit much better than what we have here. I want you to remove its skeleton again and assign all of it to the current skeleton. And now export the mesh again. Just under some different name and treat the previous one as a backup. Now I want you to open the Outfit Studio. If you don't have it, just check the link in the description. Now I want you to drop the newly exported Nif into it. And I want you to open the second instance of Outfit Studio. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to drop one of the armors already from New Vegas. It will serve us as a reference on how to make the dismemberment work. So what I'm going to use is the combat armor. As you can see, you have different meshes right here. Each of them has certain partitions assigned. So here we can see which piece has which attribute assigned to it, marked by the red color on the mesh. Now what I want you to do is use this as a reference and apply the same on your model. So for the example, I should replace this BP torso with the 5 BP right arm. Now, if you want to add a new partition, just right-click here and press Add New Partition. Now, for example, we can choose the 7 BP, or actually let's do the right leg instead. Where is it? It's the 10 right leg. There we go. Now, what you want to do now is you want to make sure your mirror here is disabled, and you want to paint exactly where the meat caps are. Okay, so what you're painting now is the part that will actually be dismembered. The ones with the higher number are the ones that will remain attached to the body. I'm really not going to spend too much time on it now. guess it's just a tutorial reference. But what you should probably do instead is you should also make sure that it aligns your topology. To save your changes, make sure to click apply. Alright, now that this has been done, it's time to test it in the game. So what I want you to do is go to File, Export to NIF. Alright, but before we add it to the game, we need to actually set up the plugin. So head to my modding necessities, go to the helpful assets, and copy and paste the plugin template. Rename it to something else, like Tutorial Armor. Rename the plugin here as well. In the meshes, create a folder for yourself. Do the same for the textures. And this is where you now need to place the NIF that you just exported from the Outfit Studio. Now, for the textures folder, you need to do the same. You need to paste here the textures that you previously created. Okay, once this is done, I want you to go back to the meshes, open up the mesh you've exported, and now we need to assign the textures. So I'll start up by explaining what each of these things means, more or less. So here, as you can see, are all of the meshes that you exported as part of this model. We're gonna start off by texturing the UpperBody. The stencil property ensures that the faces that are only one face thick are actually rendered from both sides, and not only from the front side. In the material property, you can assign the specular color as well as the emissive color. So most of the time, whenever you create a glow texture, you want to make sure it's white so that you can easily modify it by using the emissive color. Glossiness is rather self-explanatory. Same with alpha, and the emissive multiplier just multiplies whatever color you choose in the emissive color. And you don't have to actually write down the RGB colors. You can just click on the color palette here and choose whatever you want. Now here you have all of the shader settings that we've applied through Blender. As you can see, here is the shader default that we set up. Here are the flags, and you can always just double click and apply any other flag that you require. Same with the shader type or anything else in here really. This node is about your mesh. You can, for example, create a new mesh and just replace it by replacing the new tree shape data. This one is regarding the dismemberment that we set up previously. And here you have the textures. Here we have to give it a path to your texture. So in this case, it's going to be textures, tutorial, and now name of the texture. But as you can see, nothing really happened, and that's because we have not assigned a resource in here. So we want to add a folder. And now we want to specify a path to where we have the textures. Press apply, and as you can see, the texture has been applied. I obviously need to fix up these score caps because they are too far away from where the actual dismemberment happens, so I will need to move them later up here for the polish, but I think you get the point. Now you can easily copy this, paste it here, and replace it for your normal map. There we go. And now I'm going to do the same for the rest of the mesh. I think worth pointing out is that if your texture is using any transparency, then you also need to apply a node alpha property, otherwise the texture will not be transparent. Alright, once this is done, I want you to go back here, copy your tutorial armor, go to your mod organizer, and simply drag and drop it. And now enable it, and as you can see, the ESP for the tutorial armor has appeared. Obviously, make sure it's enabled. Alright, so our next step will be to actually add the armor into the game via GECK. So start it up. Now find the ESP that we just created. Make sure to set it as an active file and click OK. Alright, once it loads, I want you to find any armor from the game. I'll look for the combat armor. There we go. I'm going to click on it, do an edit. Now, we need to change its ID. I'll just do 00 tutorial armor and rename it to tutorial armor. Now, here you can play around with the stats and so on. But what we are actually interested in is the biped model. And we're going to go here and choose edit. Now we need to show the path to the mesh that we just created. And we're going to import it. It will ask us if we want to create a new object. We say yes, that's why we change the ID. Now we need to drop this armor somewhere so it's actually pickable. I'm going to do boot springs. And let's just drop it in the ground. There we go. Now, as you can see, the model here is still of the combat armor. I'll later show you how to create one of your own. Right, let's save the plugin. And now let's get into the game. Alright, so as you can see, we're now in the game and the armor is there. I'm gonna quickly equip it, just to check if everything is okay. Yep, as you can see, the armor is rigged. And it seems to work properly. Now let's quickly test the dismemberment. Here we have a poor test subject that we can use. So I'm gonna use the console commands to add the armor. And well, let's get to it. Yep, seems to be working just fine. So there are two methods. First one is harder to achieve, but gives results pretty similar to base Fallout New Vegas. Right, start by importing any of the world models from the game. Now model out the mesh that you're going to use as your world model. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to create a basic shape. We now want to export it as an object. So I export it into OBJ. Now open Outfit Studio and import any world model from the game. In my case, it's going to be a combat armor. Now import your OBJ. Now right click on the model you imported from Fallout New Vegas and set it as a reference. Now right click your mesh and copy bone weights. This will automatically copy the weights from the reference armor. You can now see if you remove the reference. Now let's make sure the weight paints are correct. So I'm going to paint a little bit here. And a little bit here. Okay, you can now export it into a NIF. Now, once you load it into Nifskope, you're going to realize that it's way beneath the collision mesh. To fix it, start by converting the Dismemberment instance into a Niskin instance. Just right click on it, go to Block, Convert, and Niskin instance. Now repeat the steps from the video. Go to the bone list, skin transform, and click on the axis. Now reset everything to 0. And do the same for the other bone. Once this is done, you should get a rough shape of your world model. Now we just need to align it with our collision mesh. So repeat the process, but just change the values so it actually fits the collision box. Once this is done, apply your textures. I'm just going to use a reference texture that I have. Save it, go to the GECK, edit your armor, and choose the world model that you just exported. Make sure to save your plugin. Now once in game, when we drop the armor, you can see it bends. Right, so the second method, and the one I honestly prefer, is to just import any of the objects from the base New Vegas game and replace its mesh and resize the collision mesh. So to start off, we need to import any of the objects. You can find most of them under the clutter, and then I'm going to choose one of them from the junk. I usually suggest you to take an object that has a similar drop sound to what you're actually looking for. So for this, I'm going to use like a book. There we go. So what I want you to do now is to just remove the mesh, because as you can see, the object consists of the mesh and the collision box. So remove the mesh. Now import your previously created armor. I want you to now remove any gore caps, as well as PipboyOn. Now, only keep the parts you want to actually use for your world object. So I'm going to remove the legs and only keep the shirt. I might actually also remove these polygons here. There we go. Now I want you to join them and remove the skeleton. Also remove the armature here. And in the materials tab, I want you to remove the skinned flag. There we go. Now scale the collision box. Just press S and scale it. Something like this should be fine. Now go to the edit mode on your main object, rotate it, and fit it into the collision box that you just created. Actually, it could be a little bit smaller, I guess. Yeah, let's do something like this. Now, for a better effect, I suggest you to just scale it on like a Z-axis to make it a little bit flatter. Now just drop it here and let's rename it like tutorial armor. And now we should be safe to export. So file, export, NIF, and export NIF. Now in GECK, edit your armor. Choose world model, edit. Now choose the path of our newly created model. Click OK. Save it, and now launch Fallout New Vegas. Okay, we're in the game. Now let's drop the armor on the ground. And as you can see, it's there. I know it's a little bit stiff, but hey, it's much easier than the first method. And if you want to make sure that the sleeves are not going through the ground, then you just need to increase the size of the collision mesh. I hope you learned at least something from this video, and if you have any questions, then don't hesitate to ask. Thanks, bye.